Hey everyone! I decided that it's time for another part. Plus, I had already made the 8th part of Aquaphobia. And I'm sorry to say, we're going back to some angst. But don't worry, we love angsty things. And I don't know. This was one of my favorite parts because I think it adds a lot more context to the story. So hopefully you feel the same way and enjoy. Part 8, Reunion. Adrian stood in front of the school, sucking in a deep breath. There was a lot of thoughts running through her mind, and it slightly scared her. It was the day of her high school reunion. Every year, her old swim team met up to, well, reunite. She hadn't been to one since she was 20, the day she and Arthur broke up. Apart from Natalia and Nicholas, she hadn't been in contact with anyone else. She was nervous to see their reactions, but she had wanted to go, to meet everyone. Plus, there was no turning back. Over the weekend, she hung out a lot with Eva and Mateo, catching a ride back to Ganes with them. She stayed at a hotel for the night, getting ready for the reunion the next day. If you keep standing out here like that, you'll freeze in place. Adrian turned around quickly to see Nicholas behind her, a cheeky smile on his face. Even though both Nicholas and Natalia stayed in Paris, she had only seen Natalia these last few weeks. Nico! She grinned, meeting the male halfway and giving him a hug. You idiot, that's not how it works. They laughed. Oh, how she missed her old friends. Are you two done? Natalia groaned, the two friends parting and turning toward the girl. Come on, it's freezing out here. She began to walk towards the school, Nicholas grabbing Adrian's arm and helping her walk despite the aid of her crutches. So, how are you? Matt tells me that you're recovering quickly, Nicholas asked, his voice light. Adrian chuckled, smiling at the ground. Yeah, I am. Nat is extremely good at what she does, so I wouldn't expect any less from her. Oh, is that a praise from the almighty diving queen? Nicholas wiggled his eyebrows, causing Adrian to roll her eyes and lightly slap his arm playfully in retort. Oh, shush you, she chuckled, her feet stopping as they stood right outside the gym door. Hey, you ready? Nicholas asked, and Adrian just nodded slowly, not trusting her voice. She felt him squeeze her arm lightly, a sign of reassurance. They don't hate you, Drake. Adrian nodded, not quite believing what Nicholas had said, but his words of confidence made her feel better, her nerves lessening by the second. Yeah, let's go, she finally said, the two of them walking into the gym slowly. Oh my goodness, Captain? A familiar voice exclaimed, and soon all the attention was on her. Captain! A girl with long almond hair ran over to her, carefully embracing her into a hug. Adrian smiled, tears pricking her eyes as she returned the hug. Maxine, my pupil. How are you, my dear? Maxine giggled, clinging onto her tighter. I've missed you so much, Captain. The two girls parted, Maxine dabbing her olive green eyes with the sleeve of her sweater. Mommy? Who is she? The little girl asked, drawing the brunette's attention away from Adrian. Adrian observed this situation and smiled. The little girl had to be around 6 years old now, and she had dark brunette hair with small little curls. Her bright olive green eyes resembled so much of the woman standing before Adrian, dark chocolate freckles dotting her cheeks. This is your Auntie Addie, Maxine knelt down to the girl's eye level, a sweet smile on her face. Auntie Addie? The girl tilted her head toward the copperhead, Adrian nodding and giving her a small nod. It made her happy knowing that Maxine still considered her a friend enough to keep her part of her daughter's life. And Adrian? Maxine turned toward the copperhead, giving her a bright smile. This is my daughter, Eleanor, or Ellie. Adrian nodded, kneeling down to Ellie's level. Hi, sweet girl. She smiled, and the smile Ellie gave her was adorable. How have you been? It made her emotional seeing how much Ellie had grown. The last time Adrian had seen Ellie, she was just a few weeks old. I'm good, Auntie. Ellie giggled, running over to Adrian and extending her arms. The copperette got the message and extended hers, allowing the girl to embrace her before she wrapped her own arms around Ellie. Oh, you've grown so much, Adrian chuckled, sniffling slightly. Come on, you three, a voice interrupted the sweet exchange, catching the adult's attention. Come join the rest of us. Adrian looked at the male, smiling cheekily as she recognized him to be Andrew. Coming, Rue. Maxine smiled sweetly at her husband, turning back to her friend and daughter. Come on, you two. Go socialize. The reunion was a blast. Everyone, as expected, was surprised to see their old captain back in France, but even more shocked to learn that she was injured. They decided to leave their old games for another day, and instead just sit and talk. They went around the circle, sharing new plans, what's been going on, and even reminiscing old memories. It was just like old times, sitting around in a circle whilst just killing time. Currently, they were sharing stories regarding their careers. Adrian couldn't have been more happy and proud to see just how well all of her underclassmen have done. It was a light moment. Barbecue, juice, and story time. It couldn't have gone any better than that. Adrian, you need to tell us what it's like being in New York. The attention was suddenly turned on her. One of her underclassmen, Julia, excitedly waited to hear all about her former captain's adventures, and it slightly amused the copperette. All right, she chuckled, but first I'm going to wash up in the restroom. I'll be back in 5 minutes, Adrian said as she carefully stood up, her teammates laughing and telling her to come back quickly. She left quickly to the restroom, closing the door behind her and letting out a sigh. She splashed cold water on her face, giving herself a quick look in the mirror. She noticed that she was smiling, only happy thoughts entering her mind. Adrian hated mirrors because she hated seeing all of her imperfections that only she could see or hear. At all costs, she avoided mirrors because she didn't want to spiral down a road of self-deprecation. But today, she looked in the mirror and smiled genuinely. She liked the way she looked and was amazed by how real her smile was. She was heading out of the bathroom, ready to go back to her old teammates to play games, when a familiar voice made her freeze in the hallway, just a few feet away from the gym entrance. Her once bright smile fell as dread pricked her skin. You really are too kind, my dear. A voice with a molasses tone spoke, Adrian's breath catching in her throat. Her teammates gave a few other comments, but they all mixed together in a static-like background as Adrian subconsciously walked to the gym entrance, her eyes wide with both dread and fear. Madame de la Petite, Monsieur de la Petite, thank you for all of your hard work and contributions to the school. It has been a real privilege to have served you. Maxine bowed respectfully, truly showing her colors as the class representative. Adrian couldn't breathe. She felt sick with nerves. Since her parents had disowned her, miraculously, no one had made the correlation to who her parents were, mostly because Adrian hadn't seen her parents since she had been kicked out of her home many years ago. But now, with all members of the De La Petite family in one place, she feared that someone would make that correlation. Or better yet, her parents would stop her. She wanted to bolt, but her body was frozen in place. It was like a car crash, a gruesome one that begged her to flee. Yet she was too intoxicated by the sight to even move. She knew she had to leave before someone recognized her, otherwise her parents would see her. She turned to leave, making it out of sight of the gym entrance when a hand wrapped around her forearm and swung her against the wall. She grunted as her back hit the wall with little force. Her teeth grit together. Her eyes looked up, and once again she felt like being sick. "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" her father said. He looked the same, his silver hair with hints of black, tanned complexion and tall figure, a source of power and intimidation. "You do know this is a closed event, don't you, hun?" Adrian wanted to gag. Hun. That was her mother, condescending and manipulative. She was actually relieved that her parents didn't recognize her. "Pardon my intrusion, Miss Sir, but I'm actually part of the team," she managed to say without sounding too scared. "I'm their former captain," she said, this time with confidence, only to hear snickers. What nonsense! In the 5 years that we had been sponsoring the school, we have never seen you here. And what sort of good captain leaves their team for 5 years? Her father nearly laughed, his tone interrogative. That used to scare Adrian, but she had grown to hate it, and with that hatred she learned to ignore the tone. "Work took me overseas, but I don't know how that is any of your business." Adrian looked up into her father's face with an unwavering expression, and for a moment she saw something recognizable flash in her father's eyes. She knew he recognized her, and if he did, he wasn't going to say anything. "Now, let me go and kindly hand me my crutches." She nodded her head toward her crutches, which were on the ground, having been dropped when she was pinned against the wall. "Madame de la Petite? Monsieur de la Petite?" A familiar voice called out to the two, and Adrian's eyes widened. Her body freezing once again. Her confidence fell, and fear made her tremble internally. "Arthur, dear, is that you?" Adrian's mother asked, cooing and extending her arms, hugging Arthur with warmth and love, something Adrian had never once experienced in her life from her own parents. Adrian's father let her go abruptly, turning to the boy and forgetting all about Adrian as she dropped to the floor, hissing silently and checking her ankle. "So good to see you, young man. How has work been treating you? Last I've heard, you got yourself a promotion." "Good to see you too, sir, and you heard correctly." Arthur smiled, and Adrian sighed, remaining on the ground where she fell, thinking that would limit her visibility. "Oh, miss seeing you, dear. We envy your parents to have such a wonderful child," Adrian's mother cooed, stroking Arthur's face in a motherly way. "Sometimes it makes me wish we would have considered having a child." Ouch. Adrian swallowed thickly, averting her eyes. It was one thing for her parents to not recognize her, but to treat someone else with the same affection she yearned for as a child and completely deny her existence actually hurt a little. "Ah, you two are too sweet," Arthur chuckled. "But what are you two doing outside of the party?" "You had a pest trying to break into your party." Adrian's thoughts were interrupted as she suddenly felt all eyes on her. She looked up nervously, seeing hatred in her father's eyes, disapproval and mockingness in her mother's eyes. in confusion washed over by worry in Arthur's. She decided to keep looking in Arthur's eyes because it was a lot easier to focus on him than her parents. Arthur's eyes suddenly narrowed, as if taking offense to Adrian being called a pest. She silently prayed that he wouldn't say anything, but knowing him and what she did, Adrian counted down the seconds, waiting for Arthur to reveal her identity. You mean our captain? He raised his eyebrow, and Adrian just stared, transfixed on him. He hadn't called her by her name. To any other person, it wouldn't have mattered, but Arthur had never once addressed Adrian as his captain. They were co-captains, so they always called each other some nickname by their full names. Captain? Maxine popped her head around the corner, spotting the girl on the floor. She gasped, standing and beginning to make her way toward the copperette. Adrian, are you okay? Adrian's eyes widened because she wasn't expecting her cover to be blown. Immediately, her mother gasped. Adrian? She repeated in a chillingly cold voice that made Adrian tremble. She wasn't scared of her parents. She just didn't want to be there, reminded that she didn't have a family. Max, why don't you go take care of the party? I'll take care of Ren and help our guests. Arthur took control, crouching down to Adrian's level, but not looking at her. He stared at Maxine, who tilted her pretty little head in confusion before and walking back into the gym, the doors closing behind her. Adrian. Isn't Adrian de la Petite, or just some other girl who also happens to have the same name as... Her mother cut herself off, looking at Arthur. As her daughter? Arthur asked, his voice bitter, a complete opposite tone to what he had previously used with them. No, her mother continued. He's smart, madame. There is no use of trying to hide it, so go on. Act as yourselves and not what you show the media. Adrian muttered under her breath, loud enough for everyone to hear. Brat! Her mother scowled. Adrian thought it was such a shame for such a beautiful woman to wear such a nasty expression. It really was pitiful, but she no longer blamed herself. Arthur, my boy, could you give us a moment? Adrian's father asked, glaring at her mother and daring her to speak. Adrian squeezed Arthur's hand, indicating that it was okay for him to leave. He studied her expression, as he always did, tapping her arm twice as he nodded, indicating that he would be nearby just in case she needed help. All she'd have to do was say his name. He got up and left shortly after their exchange, leaving Adrian alone with the people she once told her mother and father. She stood up slowly, using the wall to gain her balance before bending over to grab her crutches off the ground. Whatever you want to say to me, say it now, because I'm never going to see either of you again. The people she had once called her parents looked at each other before focusing on her, the atmosphere tight and suffocating. She waited for one of them to pounce, and as her father stepped forward, she knew what the fight would be. Adrian knew how they attacked with their words. She was ready for what he had to say. What are you doing here? He asked territorially. Adrian narrowed her eyes and frowned. Funny, I should be asking you that, she said, exhaling and clenching her hands into fists to stop her from shaking. After all, this is where I went to school on full-ride scholarship, where I became valedictorian, became captain during just my second year, and again in my third. This was where I began participating in canal. where I made friends and where I got my scholarship to go study overseas in America. But of course, you wouldn't happen to know any of that. There was nothing accusing in her tone. It was merely the truth. It aggravated something in both of the people standing before the culprit. What happened to your leg? The mother asked snidely, and Adrian looked her dead in the eye. It was taking all of her strength to remain calm and collected, but she wouldn't let them see her break. They won't break her. She was unbreakable. I'm not sure why you're asking when you're only asking to make fun of me, but for your information, I re-injured my ankle and shoulder, but you wouldn't know of that since neither of you picked up the phone when the doctor called to ask if they could perform surgery on my knee. Adrian gritted her teeth, her mother's eyes never wavering. Watch your tone, young lady, her father warned, but Adrian just rolled her eyes. I'm not your daughter, so why should I listen to you when you attack me with such words? She asked, glaring at both of them. Like you told me nearly 14 years ago, I am not your daughter, and I'll always be considered as your little mistake. An excuse of a daughter and a human being to hold your name. That hurt to admit, but she wanted to use every single truth she had as her weapon. She didn't want them getting close or thinking they could come back into her life because as far as they knew, she had nothing to her name. Peshajak, she hasn't changed. Her mother smirked as if her words struck a nerve in Adrian. She's still so stubborn and cold. I've changed more than you would even know. Adrian spat. She was growing agitated, but her voice was chillingly calm, her body straight and her posture fixed. I'm a stranger to you just as much as you are to me, so before your dirty mouth slanders who I am, I suggest you close it. Adrian began walking to the door, wanting to leave as quickly as she could. Enjoy the party or whatever. Don't even try to contact me. Just one last question. Her father's voice made her stop as she waited expectantly what he was going to say. Just what is your relationship with Arthur St. Dragon? Adrian's eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat. She closed her eyes to steady herself, letting out a collective breath. One of my teammates and good friends, she stated, not wanting to tell her parents any more than that in case they would use it against her, against Arthur. I'm leaving. She didn't wait as she got herself out of the school, immediately pulling out her phone and dialing a number. She waited, the ringing noise going once, twice, and once more before it clicked, and the girl's voice was heard on the other side of the line. Hello? The girl asked, and Adrian let out a breath of relief. Ava, it's Adrian. I kinda need a place to crash. Can you pick me up from the school? Adrian asked, waiting for her friend to answer. I'll be there in 5. Hold tight, babes. And just like that, the call ended, and Adrian was left to wait for Ava to come pick her up. Alright, that was part 8. I know there's a few grammar errors that I need to correct, but this part is pretty crucial to the character development for Adrian and Arthur as well. And there's quite an important part leading up. It's one of those parts that just add some background to the character and what has really happened. I know it was kind of a slow build-up, or maybe you don't see the importance of it yet, but it's getting there because it's gonna have a huge part to play in why they actually broke up and how Adrian views things. Hopefully you enjoyed this part, and stay tuned for the next one. I still have to go ahead and write part 9, but you should be able to expect it coming up in at least the next couple of weeks, if not sooner. Uh, until next time, thank you for watching, and bye!